Daniel Carter sat hunched over a worn-out table in the corner of the small-town library, his calloused hands gripping a pen as he filled out yet another job application. His tired eyes scanned the fine print, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the two little girls waiting for him at home. Emily and Ella, his 5-year-old twin daughters, were his entire world. They were the reason he woke up every morning, no matter how heavy his burdens felt. It had been nearly 3 years since his wife, Claire, had passed away after a sudden illness. Her absence still left a void that time hadn't managed to heal. Daniel had done everything he could to keep life stable for his daughters, but between working long hours at the auto garage and trying to make ends meet, there were cracks in the life he'd built. Bills piled up on the kitchen counter, groceries were often stretched thinner than they should have been, and most nights, he came home too tired to even pretend he wasn't drowning. The hardest part, though, wasn't the exhaustion. It was the way Emily sometimes asked, "Daddy, why don't you play tea party with us anymore?" Or when Ella would quietly tuck herself into bed without a bedtime story because she knew he was too tired. Their innocent voices were daggers to his heart. He wanted to give them the world, but instead, he felt like he was giving them scraps of his energy. That afternoon, as he left the library, a flyer pinned to the bulletin board caught his attention. Babysitter available, loving, reliable patient. Call Anna. The paper was simple, handwritten, with a small doodle of a smiling sun at the corner. Daniel hesitated, his fingers brushing over the number. Babysitters cost money, money he barely had. But then he remembered the twins' laughter from months ago, the way they used to beg him to sit on the floor and join their games. They deserved more than his fatigue. Maybe just for a few hours a day, he muttered to himself, tearing off the strip with the phone number. That evening, after putting the girls to bed, Daniel sat at the kitchen table with his phone in hand. He stared at the number for a long time, his pride wrestling with his desperation. Finally, he dialed. A gentle, melodic voice answered, "Hello, this is Anna." Daniel cleared his throat nervously. Hi, my name is Daniel Carter. I saw your flyer about babysitting." There was a small pause before she replied warmly, "Of course. Can you tell me a bit about your children?" Her calm tone put him at ease, and before he knew it, he was telling her about Emily's obsession with fairy tales and Ella's love for drawing, about their boundless energy and mischievous giggles. Anna listened intently, and by the end of the call, Daniel felt something he hadn't in a long time: relief. They arranged for her to come by the next evening. When the doorbell rang, Daniel opened it to find a young woman with a kind smile standing on his porch. She wore jeans and a soft lavender blouse, her brown hair tied back loosely, giving her an approachable, down-to-earth look. "Hi, I'm Anna," she said, her eyes warm and steady. From the moment she stepped inside, Emily and Ella were captivated. "Are you our babysitter?" Emily asked, clutching her stuffed bunny. "Yes," Anna said with a grin, crouching down to their level. "And if you want, I can also be your tea party guest." The twins squealed with delight and pulled her into their room, showing her every toy, every crayon drawing taped to the wall, and every secret hideout made of blankets and pillows. Daniel watched in astonishment from the hallway. Usually, his girls were shy around strangers, but with Anna, it was as if they'd known her forever. For the next few hours, the house was filled with laughter. Anna didn't just sit back and supervise. She joined in wholeheartedly. She braided Emily's hair into tiny pigtails, helped Ella finish her castle drawing, and listened with genuine interest as they told her wild stories about dragons and princesses. When it was time for dinner, she didn't shy away from helping in the kitchen, chatting easily with Daniel while they prepared macaroni and cheese together. Daniel couldn't help but notice how natural she seemed, not just with the girls but in the house itself. For the first time in months, the heavy weight in his chest lightened. He found himself smiling more, laughing even, as he watched his daughters thrive under her attention. What Daniel didn't know, however, was that Anna was not who she appeared to be. Her real name was Anastasia Reynolds, daughter of Catherine Reynolds, the powerful CEO of Reynolds Enterprises, the city's largest and most prestigious corporation. Anastasia had grown up in a world of luxury, her life dictated by her mother's strict expectations and society's unrelenting gaze. Everywhere she went, people treated her differently. Friends often had hidden agendas, men saw her as a stepping stone to power, and the weight of her last name suffocated her. She had begged her mother for a break from the corporate lessons, the charity galas, and the suffocating image of the perfect daughter. When Catherine refused, Anastasia decided to take matters into her own hands. She created the identity of Anna, a simple college student offering babysitting services. It was her secret rebellion, her chance to live life without the shadow of her family's empire. And here, in this modest home with its slightly peeling wallpaper and mismatched furniture, Anastasia felt something she never had before: normalcy. Every evening she spent with Emily and Ella made her heart swell. They didn't care about her last name, her clothes, or her connections. To them, she was just Anna, their friend, their playmate, their babysitter. And then there was Daniel. She often caught herself watching him when he wasn't looking. His rough hands spoke of long hours of work, his tired eyes of sleepless nights. Yet beneath the fatigue, there was a gentleness in the way he tucked the twins into bed, a quiet strength in how he carried the weight of his world alone. He didn't chase wealth or status. He lived for his daughters. Anastasia had met countless wealthy men in her mother's circles, but none of them compared to the authenticity she saw in Daniel. Still, she guarded her secret fiercely. She knew the risk: if he ever found out who she really was, everything could fall apart. He might think she had deceived him, that her presence in his life was a game. And so, every night as she walked home under the dim streetlights, she reminded herself, don't get too close. Don't let him know the truth. But as the weeks turned into months, that reminder grew harder to believe. Because with every giggle from the twins, every smile from Daniel, Anastasia found herself wondering, what if this small, imperfect home was the very place where she truly belonged? Weeks slipped into months, and in the Carter household, life began to change in ways Daniel hadn't thought possible. Where once the evenings had been quiet and heavy with exhaustion, now they echoed with the bubbling laughter of Emily and Ella as Anna played alongside them. The little apartment, though modest and worn, seemed brighter these days, almost as if Anna had carried sunlight into it with her presence. Daniel couldn't ignore the difference she made. His daughters, who had once looked at him with longing whenever he rushed out to work, now greeted him at the door with sparkling eyes and stories about all the fun they'd had with Anna. He often stood in the doorway, pausing for a moment, watching scenes unfold that stirred something deep within him. Anna sitting cross-legged on the rug, helping the twins build a castle out of wooden blocks. Anna leaning over the kitchen counter, guiding little Ella's hands as she learned to crack an egg. Anna's soft voice weaving bedtime stories as Emily curled into her lap. It was more than babysitting, it was belonging. And Daniel, despite his best efforts, began to feel the tug of emotions he thought he'd buried forever. He would catch himself watching her too long, noticing the way her hair slipped from its tie when she bent down to play, or how her eyes softened whenever she looked at his daughters. Sometimes, in the stillness of night, he wondered if it was wrong to feel this way, if he was betraying Claire's memory by letting another woman into his heart. But then he would remember how Emily and Ella hugged Anna goodnight, how safe and joyful they were in her presence, and he knew he couldn't ignore what was blossoming inside him. Anna, too, was changing. She had taken on the job to escape the suffocating grip of her privileged life, but she had found far more than she had expected. She found herself lingering even after Daniel returned home, offering to help clean the dishes or chat for a few minutes before leaving. Their conversations started small, about the twins, about schoolwork, about meals, but gradually grew deeper. She learned about Daniel's struggles, his dreams for his daughters, his quiet regrets. And he unknowingly drew out pieces of her she had long hidden away. Her love for painting, her frustration with her mother's world, her longing for something simple and real. But with every passing day, the secret Anna held pressed harder against her chest. She wasn't just a babysitter. She wasn't the girl she appeared to be. She was Anastasia Reynolds, the heir to a powerful empire, the daughter of a woman who could buy and sell the world Daniel lived in. And though she wanted to tell him, fear always sealed her lips. She was terrified that the moment the truth came out, the fragile, precious bond they had built would shatter. One rainy evening, Daniel came home earlier than expected. The house smelled of cookies and laughter echoed from the kitchen. He stopped in the doorway, unnoticed, and watched as Anna stood at the counter, flour dusting her cheeks while the twins giggled uncontrollably beside her. Ella's hair was messy with braids, Emily's nose was smudged with chocolate, and Anna looked radiant. For the first time in years, Daniel felt his heart stir with warmth he thought he'd never feel again. "Thank you," he whispered before he even realized it. Anna turned, startled. Their eyes met across the room, and for a moment, time seemed to pause. Rain pattered against the windows, the twins' laughter faded into the background, and all that existed was the look in his eyes, raw, vulnerable, grateful. "Why are you thanking me?" Anna asked softly, her voice trembling. Daniel stepped forward, running a hand through his hair. "Because you've given them something I couldn't. You've brought back their laughter, their joy. You've given them a piece of childhood I thought they'd lost when Claire," his voice cracked and he looked away. "I'm just a mechanic, Anna. I do my best, but sometimes I feel like I'm failing them." Anna's chest ached. She wanted so badly to tell him everything, that she wasn't just Anna, that she had the power to give his daughters anything they could ever want. But she also knew that wasn't what he needed. So instead, she placed a gentle hand on his arm and whispered, "You're not failing them, Daniel. You're giving them what money can't buy: love, safety, and hope. That's more than most children ever get." Their eyes lingered on each other, a fragile silence filled with unspoken emotions. For the first time, Daniel felt the walls he'd built around his heart begin to crumble. But before either could say more, Emily tugged at Anna's hand, giggling, and the moment dissolved into the ordinary chaos of bedtime. Still, that night, neither Daniel nor Anna slept easily. Both lay awake, hearts pounding, haunted by the same question: what if this was more than just babysitting? But secrets have a way of surfacing. A few days later, Daniel was outside, bent under the hood of his aging car, when the unmistakable purr of an expensive engine filled the street. He straightened, wiping grease from his hands, as a sleek black limousine rolled to a stop in front of his house. His brows furrowed in confusion. No one in their quiet neighborhood drove a car like that. The door opened, and out stepped a woman in a tailored suit, her posture sharp and commanding. Her presence alone radiated power. Daniel's confusion deepened until his gaze shifted behind her, and his breath caught. Anna. But not the Anna he knew. She stood there in a crisp dress, her hair perfectly styled, her expression tight with unease. She wasn't the playful babysitter with flour on her cheeks. She was someone else entirely. "Mr. Carter," the woman said, her voice firm and authoritative. "I am Catherine Reynolds, CEO of Reynolds Enterprises, and this is my daughter Anastasia." The words hit Daniel like a thunderclap. His wrench slipped from his hand, clattering onto the pavement. He turned to Anna, no Anastasia, his mind spinning, his chest tight. What is she talking about?" Anastasia's face flushed, her eyes brimming with fear. "Daniel, I was going to tell you, I swear, but I didn't know how." The twins came bounding out of the house, their little arms wrapping around Anna's legs. "Anna, Anna," they cried, oblivious to the tension crackling in the air. Daniel's voice shook as he spoke, anger and betrayal cutting through his words. "Why didn't you tell me? Why pretend to be someone you're not?" Tears welled in her eyes. "Because with you, I wasn't Catherine Reynolds' daughter. I wasn't the heiress everyone whispers about. I was just me. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I truly belonged somewhere." Daniel's chest ached as her words pierced him. He wanted to believe her, wanted to hold on to the warmth she had brought into his life. But the sting of betrayal burned too sharply. He had trusted her with his daughters, with his home, with his heart. And now, he didn't know what was real anymore. Catherine's cold gaze flicked between them. Anastasia, it's time to come home. This little charade has gone on long enough. The rain began to fall again, pattering softly against the ground as Daniel stood frozen, his world unraveling around him. Emily and Ella clung to Anna's hands, their innocent faces confused. "Daddy, why are you mad at Anna?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. Daniel couldn't answer. His throat tightened, his emotions warring inside him. He saw the fear in Anastasia's eyes, the pleading in her expression, the undeniable love his daughters had for her. But could love born from a lie survive the weight of truth? As the rain soaked through his shirt, Daniel realized he stood at a crossroads. He could shut her out, protect his heart, and keep his life simple. Or he could take the risk, believe that what they had was real, even if it had begun with a lie. And as Anastasia whispered, "Please, Daniel, don't let this be the end," he knew his decision would shape not only his life but the lives of the two little girls who already saw her as family.